You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
The day has finally arrived. It's the start of a brand new NFL season. Happy 2024 kickoff, everyone, and welcome inside the GM Shuffle. I'm Grace Remington with Michael Lombardi. And Michael, before we get into the good stuff, you've been on countless fields, countless press boxes. Do you have any game day memories you want to share with us?
You know, this is 40 years, Grace, long ago. I mean, I know I sound like the old man on the lawn, but it's been 40 years. And I can still remember going to my first game as being a paid employee of the National Football League. I was working for the 49ers. We took one of those big planes. We went back to Detroit. It was kind of the same situation. It was a rematch game. We had beaten Detroit the year before. I was with the team. We beat Detroit the year before on a field goal late in the playoff run, late in the game to win. And so we opened the season up at the Pontiac Silverdome, which if you've ever been there was a dump. I mean, it was just like this giant big, it was bad. I mean, it was just a bubble, but Barry Sanders was great. But anyway, so we were back there and I was in the press box and Mr. DeBartolo needed 2 packs of cigarettes and his bodyguard came over to me and said, "Hey, can you go get him 2 packs of cigarettes?" And he hands me like $100 bill. I had to go get change, and then I had to go get, to go buy them because you could buy them at the concession stand there. And then I came back with $95 back of change, and the guy says, "No, keep it." And I was making no money at the time, and I can still remember we won the game on a Ray Wersching field goal late in the game, and we were all like holding hands in the press box watching that. And to me, that's the NFL. I mean, the opening of the season is an opening of hope. It's an opening of optimism. And when it starts the right way, when you win the game the right way, it just makes the season go a lot better. So, yeah, I love it. I mean, it's just, to me, it's 40 years of great memories. And hopefully that my 2 sons enjoy the same thing.
That's so awesome to hear. And hey, $95 is a lot for someone first starting out.
Yeah, 1984. Yeah, hell yeah. I think my rent.
Yeah, we need to adjust for inflation too.
Yeah, they said I lived in Menlo Park, but I was on the border of Menlo Park and East Palo Alto. It wasn't a good neighborhood. I was robbed like about 3 times. And I was robbed so much, John McVay, the general manager of the team, gave me a bunch of clothes that he had, didn't need anymore because I had gotten robbed so much. It was great. But I wish I could go back to those times. I loved it. Life was simple and I learned a lot and I appreciated it. You appreciate it long as you get longer in life. Like as you start out in your career, you started down, you went to Birmingham and now you're in Nashville, you moved around. But you'll as you get older, you learn to appreciate your growing time. You want to hurry up and get to the top of the mountain. But I think to me, it's more about appreciation on the climb. It really is. I'm going to interview a guy named Joshua Metcalf today for the Daily Coach. And he writes a lot of books about, going through the process. It's 1 Pound the Stone, which it's a very good book. Carry the Water. A lot of it is all about falling in love with the process, which to me is what makes the NFL so good because it's only the first game and you have to love the process. I think having been around Belichick, if somebody said to me, what's Belichick's greatest strength is he loves the process. I mean, whether he's playing the shittiest team in the league or he's playing for the Super Bowl, the process is the process.
Yeah, the grind definitely means a lot when you're first starting out. It means a lot to have encouragement from the people who are above you at that point. I have a similar story. I covered the Super Bowl winning Buccaneers, then went to the Panthers the year later. And game day mornings were the best for me. It was that 2 hours standing on the field. I would always go over to Mrs. Tepper, Nicole Tepper, and just kind of ask about her week, how things were going. And I know the fans, have their opinions about how that organization is run. But the thing they don't see is, someone whose time is worth so much more than you can imagine. She has plenty of other things to do, yet giving me a few minutes every Sunday meant a lot to me as a young reporter. So lots of great moments like that. There is definitely a magical feeling on game day.
I think one of my favorite memories of doing something like that was I was at a Stanford, Oregon game, and Phil Knight was on the sideline. And he's, this is way before the kickoff. And I walked over to him and I said, "Did you ever imagine this for you?" And he
Oh,
laughed. And if you've ever read Shoe Dog, it's one of the best books I could recommend to anybody. I said, did you ever imagine that what you thought would be on everybody's feet for the rest of their lives? And he said, in such a humble way, he said, no, and it feels really good.
wow. Yeah, Shoe Dog's on my bookshelf. I need to get into that one, but I'm sure we could
I
do
need to get
several
my books on.
podcast episodes of
I
just
need
your
to get my
stories.
book on your bookshelf. Yeah, I got to get that
Oh,
one on
yes.
your book. Yeah, yeah,
I
I got
would
to
love
get
a
that
copy.
on there.
Yeah,
So
I'll get into that
I'll
right
send
away.
you. I got two of them. You bet.
Oh, yay, thank you. Okay, we will offline that. Let's get into this Thursday night football game. Ravens Chiefs, a rematch of last year's AFC title game. Obviously, a lot of confusing coaching decisions on the Ravens side and several changes to both teams this year. The line has bounced between 2.5, 3 in the Chiefs' favor. How do you see this one going?
I think this is a really going to be a fun game. I look. I think one of the things in most teams that start fast is really it's about continuity. It's about the same offensive coordinator, the same quarterback, the same offensive line. I think those are really this. You have to have it. It's like pitching rotations in baseball. If you have four solid pitchers from one year to the next year, your team's probably going to stay pretty consistent. And unfortunately for Baltimore, they're going to start three different players in the offensive line. And that's assuming that Ronnie Stanley can stay healthy at left tackle. So, I don't know if Rosencrantz isn't due to start. He may start. They're going to have a new starting guard. They're going to have a new starting left guard because Simpson's gone. So I think a lot of changes there. Now, Henry is a really good runner. I think they have to change how they run the football schematically. We've talked about this all off season. They should be more in the pistol and more under center because he needs some time to get going. He's what we call a point of entry back. And by that, it means you've got to feed him to the hole clean. What you want to do is get him into the hole clean and let his power and his size take over, which he's great at doing. But if Spagnuolo decides to blitz guys through the A gap or through the B gap or through the C gap or off the edge and get him to redirect, now he's not the same player. So to me, there's a lot of things about Baltimore that I'm uncertain about. But I do know this. I know that Baltimore as an underdog and in the first game are very good. John Harbaugh, well, think about it. I
Mhm.
mean, Lamar Jackson's 20-6 against the spread, 76.9% as an underdog, three or less. He relishes in this role. He really does. I think the pressure's off them. They play better. I thought last year, Grace, and I'm sure you probably watched, last year, I thought the pressure got to Baltimore. I mean, the week before, the Kansas City Chiefs play Buffalo in Buffalo, and Buffalo runs for 182 yards. Meanwhile, the Ravens don't even try to run. So I think that's got to change. And look, I think Kansas City's probably I don't know if they're a better team than they were last year. I think they know who they are as they start the season. They know that Pacheco's a really good player, and they can't just give him the ball 14 times. They got to give it to him more than that, like they did down the stretch.
Yeah, we'll learn a lot about both teams as the NFL season kicks off tonight. A few more news items we want to get to. Trent Williams finally ends his holdout, finalizing a reworked 3-year deal worth almost $83 million. It includes $48 million fully guaranteed. How important was this for the Niners to get this deal done?
Very few players are worth a point or two in the point spread. I mean, outside of the quarterback, right? And I think Trent Williams happens to be one of that. And I would say you could offer evidence, Grace, to that he did in fact add to the line because once that line went down to 3.5, and the news that Trent Williams was going to play, the line shot back up to 4.5. So that was really important. Look, this 49er offensive line, this is one of the areas where Kyle Shanahan has been able to get away with lesser players. They're very athletic. They can run, but they don't play with a lot of power. But Trent Williams is a different kind of player. He does play with power. He can take away the best pass rusher. They don't have to worry about sliding the line towards the left tackle. They can leave him on an island and slide the line away and help everybody else. They can get 4 blocking, 3 on the other direction. So it's really was important. I was never doubting that they would get him signed. I thought he was great at his press conference. I really, sometimes when players talk, you get kind of, no, boy, a guy looks like he would be tough to take, as a general manager. But I became really a Trent Williams fan when he got up there and talked about how he was influenced by the Ricky Pearsall shooting in downtown San Francisco in Union Square and how that affected them. And now you read all these stories about how the team has kind of bonded around that incident, which happens. It
Hmm.
happens all the time. We saw it with Buffalo when Damar Hamlin had his near death or almost death or did die
Yeah.
on the field there, and it kind of reunited their team together with refocus and purpose. So I was really impressed with Trent Williams' willingness to come in. I think he deserves the contract. He is the best left tackle in football, so that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, well, we know he impacts the offense in every way on the field. Sounds like he impacts them off the field as well. And even Ricky Pearsall showed up to practice later in the week. So great, great things going their way over there
How
in
do you
San
get
Francisco.
shot in the chest and have
I,
it not be a problem? Like I don't understand that. Like I'm not a doctor, but like how do you get shot? Like I originally read, I don't know if you read it. I thought he got shot in the arm and it went through like his bicep or something, but he got shot in the
mm.
chest. How does that happen?
Yeah, got very lucky, missed all the vital organs. And I was reading an article, I forget who on the team said it, but someone said he earned immediate street cred. That's not something I would have said, not knowing the details, not knowing he's okay. But if his teammates are saying that, it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
good
it
for
is.
him.
I mean, the fact
Um,
he wouldn't give him up his watch. I mean, I would have given him everything. I mean, the only thing I wouldn't have given up is my granddaughter. Like I would have, you want anything else, you can have it. When you got a gun, but my Lord, God give him credit. God bless him.
I know you can
That
buy a
you
new
just it's
watch
luck.
too.
Yeah, you can get one. You can't get a new life. You don't have a mulligan on that.
Okay, we got a lot to get to in this podcast. So maybe 30 seconds on the new Patrick Surtain deal and how that reset the cornerback market.
Well, look, when Atlanta gave A.J. Terrell, made him the second highest paid corner in the National Football League, the guy has had interceptions in 2 years. Patrick Surtain's agent just sat back and said, "Oh my Lord, this is the greatest thing that ever happened." And he quickly dialed the Broncos' numbers and said, "Well, what do you got to say about that?" And that's when the white flag comes out in a negotiation and says, "I surrender. How do we get this contract done?" Terrell's contract owed it to him because Sertan's a legitimate star. He can cover and he can make plays on the football. It was a smart deal. Look, I'll say this again. You can never overpay a great player. The problem is when you overpay a good player.
All right, more to come on the other side. You're listening to the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome back to the GM Shuffle, presented by Smirnoff. We do game days. Please drink responsibly. The Smirnoff Co., New York, New York. All right, our week one breakdowns are on the way, but first we're taking a look at top NFL head coaches. For some reason, Michael has it in his head that I hate coaching. That is absolutely not true.
You
But
said
either
it.
way, tell me who to
I'm
watch
just going by
here.
what you said. We're gonna, Femi. I gave Femi a nickname, 4 Game Femi. I'm gonna say graceless coach. I mean, I'm gonna call you graceless coaching. Because you give no coaches grace. I don't understand it. But look, I know we're teasing. I am teasing you about it. I mean, considering the fact that you went to the school where the cradle of coaches were. I mean, you were walking around a campus that had Sid Gilman, that had Woody Hayes, that had Bo Schembechler. I mean, name them all. I mean, are there statues for
Yep.
all those coaches on that campus?
Oh, yeah, and it's awesome. And I was there for 2 of the inductions, when John Harbaugh was inducted and when Sean McVay was inducted. It's really cool because Miami, Ohio is not known as a football school. It's a hockey school. But when I went on my high school visit there, I saw the big Cradle of the Coaches banner overlooking the stadium, and I was immediately sold. It's just so beautiful. And I
Really?
kind of grew up a nerd. I love reading sports history books. And so that's really what sold me. I was looking at probably like 10 schools. And later on in my college time there, one of my friends told me, Grace, I think you're the only non-football player who came here for football. So I was like, oh, great. I feel like a dork now, but that's okay. You
Well,
got 2 of the Cradle of Coaches on your list. So
well, I wrote about it in Football Done Right, and I'll send it to you. But I think with the impact of Miami of Ohio, with Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler, Sid Gilman, all those coaches that went there,
Sarah
when Ohio
Parsons,
State was really Ara Parseghian, when the war was going on, Paul Brown took all these players to the Great Lakes naval station, and then he put him in during the war, and that's how it all started. And then when the war ended, they all went back to Ohio State. So all the Ohio State players who couldn't play because these older guys came in, they transferred down to Miami of Ohio. And then they started their careers down there. And so, no, it's got great history. I love it. It's a beautiful campus. It's really, I mean, that drive from Cincinnati always got me when I was a scout. It was like, I'm like, am I going the right way? I feel like I was getting lost going up to the campus, but it's beautiful. It
A lot
really
of
is.
cornfields.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Well,
no
let's
doubt.
get into your blue chip and red chip head coaches here. And I love
Yeah.
to see John Harbaugh and Sean McVay in your blue chip group. So what went into
And
the decision process here?
Well, I think a lot of it. Look, I didn't put any of the young coaches in there. I think Shane Steichen has a chance to be a really good coach. I'm just not sure it's going to be this year. I think he's got a lot of talent, but I think to me when I broke down the coaches, I felt like okay, like I wanted to keep it so that it was linked to some production. Like one of the things Belichick and I we've been working on this coach thing that we do, and we've been talking about, what is the criteria? And I wrote about criteria for how to get in the Hall of Fame. They changed the rules on the Hall of Fame to where now you only have to wait a year before you get in. But like, is it one Super Bowl win get you in? Does two Super Bowl wins automatically get you in? Does a Super Bowl loss get you in? And so to me, when you look at this list, there's guys that are going in the Hall of Fame after a year. I mean, Andy Reid is easily a Hall of Fame coach. John Harbaugh is a Hall of Fame coach. Mike Tomlin hasn't had a losing season. He's deadly against any close game. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to win that. Kyle Shanahan's been to two Super Bowls. He hasn't won any. Now, we've got guys in the Hall of Fame. Bud Grant went to 4 and lost. Marv Levy went to 4 and lost. They're in the Hall of Fame. And Sean McVay's been to 2 and 1. So those to me were my blue chip coaches. And I think they make a difference, especially on game plan. I think we lost so much, Grace, of leadership in terms of we've subcontracted it out so much. Whereas I think to me, the great leaders, Reed's a leader, Harbaugh's a leader, Tomlin's a leader, Shanahan runs everything in that organization, McVay, same thing. I think there's a place in that. My red chips were Jim Harbaugh, who could easily, Jim Harbaugh's got a 70% winning percentage. He lost the Super Bowl in pro football. Sean Payton's going to go in the Hall of Fame based on the criteria I said in my book. Dan Campbell, I put him in there, and I never thought I would because I thought Dan Campbell was more of just a tough guy, a beat cop, not a detective. But I think he's got more to him than meets the eye. I know Bill Parcells has always spoke very fondly of Dan Campbell to me and to other people. So I think he is. And then I think you have to give credit to Sean McDermott. I don't like his playoff record. I don't like his 13 seconds Ackerman when he was in Kansas City. But I think he's done a good job of building that program in Buffalo, and keeping it going.
So, yeah, I'm glad you brought up the playoff record of Sean McDermott because I was looking at your rankings here and he's the name that stood out to me. I think the unfortunate reality he's had to deal with is that he's in an era where he has to coach against Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes and John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson in the same conference. And at this level, you're graded on how many times you make the playoffs. And you said it too, maybe how many Super Bowls you win. So is it possible he ever reaches that top tier of coaches?
Well, he's 13 seconds away from going to one Super Bowl. He's a missed field goal away from going to a divisional round. He's been damn close, and he just hasn't been able to break through the door. But you have to give him credit for what he's been able to build there. I would say, I don't have Mike McCarthy on this list. And Mike McCarthy's win percent, Mike McCarthy's won 36 games in the last 3 years. Nobody wants to give Mike McCarthy any credit. He's won a Super Bowl, right? I didn't put him on because I think I'm a little bit like Jerry Jones. I think watching the tape of the Cowboy Packer game has left such a bad taste in my mouth for how that team performed, that you have to blame somebody for it. Dak, Mike, and I think Jerry's letting those guys play it out. I don't think Jerry is of the opinion that I'm going to reward a shitty season with big contracts for everybody and contract extensions. So I left him off. I almost left McDermott off and just put 8 coaches on there. I felt like he deserved a little bit of street cred here, to be honest with you, Grace, because He's done a good job of building the program. I don't know if he's ever going to overcome the 13 seconds. I really don't. I think to me, that was a colossal error in judgment. It was a colossal game day management mistake that unfortunately you can't get back.
Do you think that could haunt him mentally in future situations? Do coaches get the yips?
Yeah, I think they do get the yips. I think they definitely get the
Mm.
yips. I think they're, you have demons in you. There's nothing you could do. You're constantly saying, what do I have to do to get over that hump? It's a little bit like Mickelson. I mean, look, John Madden, as great a coach as John Madden was, and he was great. I think the Raiders went to 6 conference championship games before they went to a Super Bowl. I mean, you got to have mental toughness and resolve to break through it. And it's not going to be easy. Yeah, and that's part of who your team becomes too, is that toughness. That's what a
Mm.
leader does. A leader is able to give his personality to his team. That's why it's so important. When you're subcontracted, when you're just running the offense and you don't give a shit about the defense, your team doesn't have an identity. It's why Belichick spent so much time meeting with Brady on Monday, going over the defensive secondary with the Brady and going, hey, here's what they like to do. Here's the coverage. Because he needed a connection to Brady. He needed Brady to feel his intensity so Brady's intensity could be felt to other people. It's passed down. It's called leadership. It's the great thing that Dr. Doolittle says all in the movie. We may not all look alike, but we all have the same purpose. I think you have to have that. And I think they do. I think Tomlin just writes a course in that. To me, Tomlin is the best example of somebody who understands leadership at the highest level. Would I say Mike Tomlin is the greatest chess player of all time in coaching? No, I wouldn't say that. I think he's good. I think he knows what he's doing. But where Mike Tomlin separates himself from most people is, how do I get player A to perform at a higher level? How do I get player B to perform at a higher level? How do I get the collective team to perform at a higher level? And I think he does it with his messaging. I don't think there's a better storyteller than Mike Tomlin. And I think that's part of the issue is we see football as a game of just X's and O's, but it's really the leadership's ability to tell a story. How do I tell us? Why are the 49ers drawn to the Ricky Pearsall situation, as tragic as that could have been? Is they're drawn to it because it tells a story. It unites people. And that's what great coaches do. They unite people through their storytelling, through what they believe in. I mean, Herb Brooks told the Americans that we didn't have to be great for 10 games. We just had to be great for this game. And I think that's where you go. And I think Campbell, and I'll admit this, I didn't give Campbell enough credit for having that type of intellect in terms of being able to bring people together like that. But I admit I'm wrong on that. I think he's done a really good job.
Yeah, and it's the consistency too, year over year, relating to different types of people, old players, young players, different generations. Lots of great stories. I'm sure you have. Have you considered writing a book, interviewing all these coaches on their leadership secrets?
That's a great question. No, I haven't. I definitely have thought about writing a leadership book about coaching with a business person involved with it, with Roger Martin, who's written some really good books. The Opposable Mind being one of my favorite by Roger Martin. He's a Patriot fan, but I really think there's a combination of taking the greatness of Steve Jobs, the greatness of Walt Disney, the greatness of Jeff Bezos, and then trying to understand why they're great and blend it into coaching. This is why the NFL so desperately needs a leadership center. And I've been really, I mean, Bill Belichick has really thought hard about that. And I think, to me, one of the things when he's done coaching, what I think he should do is start a Bill Belichick Leadership Center to really help coaches understand how to be a leader, how to see the game in 3 dimensions, how to understand that for us to win today, we have to do X, Y, and Z. And it isn't about, oh, we have to run the ball or we have to throw it outside. No, it's about how do we play as a collective union? How do we get this team to play a certain way? And he's brilliant at that. Parcells is brilliant at that. Al Davis taught us all those things to do. So I think there's so much merit in that. And that's why we started the Daily Coach and we have the Daily Coach community, because we want to be able to help people learn that.
Back to your point about storytelling, I think storytelling is one of the most important tools we have as humans, just in any industry. I know Belichick he's very short-worded publicly. Do you think he's a good storyteller behind the scenes?
Great. Yeah, if you ever listen to one of his talks, he's great. He does it with video and he does it through he does it through, this softness. He and Walsh were the same. When we come back from the break, I'll share with you a great Walsh story that we were just talking about when we were up at NFL Films. But we'll be right back on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome back into the GM Shuffle. Grace Remington here with Michael Lombardi. We made it through the break, Michael, and you promised us a great Bill Belichick story, so let's hear it.
So I'm up at NFL Films yesterday, and Ken Rogers, who does a lot of the stuff at Films, that he and I were talking about. I saw it online. They had this thing about Vince Lombardi, this documentary that they did in 1968 on Vince Lombardi. And they actually, Ed Sable, the founder of NFL Films, convinced Lombardi, we're going to make you into the next John Wayne of coaching. And they got Lombardi to give him access to, his life. And so they were literally in the backseat of his car as he went to church in the morning. And then he went to Sneakers to get his coffee. And then he came into the office. But so we got into that conversation. And I said to Ken, I said, do you have anything on Coach Walsh? Did you do anything like that with Coach Walsh? And he said, no, we really didn't. He said, but we have every one of these tapes of him presenting to the team, how we were going to win a game. And I thought, oh shit, I was there. I was the guy pushing the button for record when he was down in the team meeting room, which would turn into the draft room. This is how small the offices were. That would turn into the draft room after the season. So I said, it's funny. My lasting memory was in 1985. It was in December, and we were getting ready to go play the Giants back in Giant Stadium. And we played them on Monday night, and we were up 17-0 at the half. And they came roaring back and beat us 21-17. And it was a game where Mark Bavara carried Ronnie Lott for about 10 yards after he tried to tackle him. It was a great game. And so, now we had this kind of urgency to kind of offset that loss. So I'm up in the room and I'm recording it. And I said to Ken, I would love for you to find that tape, because when Walsh was putting in that game plan, I was convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt we were going to kick their ass. Like, we were going to go after Ken. We were going after Herbie Walsh. We were going to attack their secondary. We were going to do this. We were going to do that. We were going to do everything. And then what happened? The first play of the game, we run a slant to Jerry Rice. He catches it. He makes Herbie Walsh miss, just like Walsh said he would. And the next thing you know, the ball hits his knee as he's running, and he fumbles it through the end zone, and we lose 49-3. So Eddie DeBarlo, the owner of the team, he left at halftime of that game. We used to have free lunch at the 49ers provided by Mr. D, but when we lost that game, lunch ended. And so we fend for ourselves. But then when I was telling the story to Belichick, he's like, oh, yeah, I remember that game. That was the one game, this was his direct quote, that was the one game where I've never felt the team believe they were going to win more than that game. And so it's so fascinating, right? I'm in California watching the tape, believing we're going to win, and he's sitting there in New York, and he had a team that felt like there was no way we were going to lose the game. Like, they were so confident that they were going to kick our ass. And he said a lot of it had to do with the fact that, we had a dynasty, we were winning a lot of games, and it was kind of for their time to emerge as a champion. So it's a different perspective, but when you feel it, when the players know they're better, watch out.
That kind of feels like, I know you're a big believer in momentum, but you both had different interpretations of it.
Yeah.
Almost.
Exactly. Right. But his was right. Mine was wrong. And mine started out right, but what ended really rather quickly. That was a game Joe Montana got knocked out, and it was a bad day from that point forward. But, in the 86 draft is when we recouped it. That game we lost, and then the 86 draft, we had probably one of the greatest drafts of all time. So we bounced back. We showed our mental toughness.
And you both were recounting a game from 40 years ago, like it was yesterday.
Yeah, it was like yesterday. Yeah. Grace, you don't live in the, Al Davis used to tell me all the time, you don't work in the NFL, you live in it. I'm sure there's things in your life, that you live in. I know you like to write music and you want to write songs. So I'm sure that you're going to go through that process and you're going to feel it. It's going to be part of your DNA. It's going to be, I did this, It's like, if you ask Springsteen today, like, where did he write this song? He can tell you exactly where he was, what the inspiration was, and how he did it. Now he can't tell you 5 minutes before he got the idea to write The Rising, but he can tell you that he was at the beach in New Jersey and some guy said after 9/11, Bruce, we need you now. And Bruce, we need you now became The Rising as a prayer for the country. So that inspiration. So when you live something like that, it becomes way more powerful to you.
Yeah, emotionally charged moments definitely help cement those memories. I'm sure we could get into the metaphysics of that, but that's for another time. Let's break down some of these week one games, though, starting with Friday night, Packers and the Eagles. This number has bounced back and forth between 2.5, 3 in favor of the Eagles. The total has been bet up to 49 as they're playing in elevation. But a few changes here, mainly the Eagles offense. A new system under Kellen Moore. They're also losing Jason Kelce. How do you see this one going?
I think the Kelsey loss is significant because he was really running everything. I mean, he would do the audibles at the line of scrimmage. He would set the protection. Really, the quarterback in most offenses rely on the lineman. In New England's offense, Brady did everything. He set the protections. He did it all. But in Philly, Kelsey did a lot of that. And that became, that took a lot of responsibility off of Jalen Hurts' shoulders, which made the game a lot easier for him. They'll miss him. But I just think this Eagle team, I think Green Bay is a good team. When you really go back and study them, they're a better pass protection team than they are a run blocking team. I think Josh Jacobs has got to have a really good game here. I don't know if he's as good as Aaron Jones was at the end of the year. We're going to find out. His metrics at the end of the season last year say that's not the case, but we'll see. And look, if you force Jordan Love to have to throw the ball and keep him throw the ball inside the numbers and take away those deep shots, I think they have a chance. They got to be able to rush. I think the strength of the Packers is, again, their pass protection. The strength of their Eagles is their ability to get after the passer. So it's strength on strength. We're going to see which one wins that. But I think Philly's ability to run the football, what they do with Barkley and how they handle Barkley is going to be the key to the game. And look, when Jalen Hurts is not the favorite, when he's a favorite, you would think he would be a much better player as a favorite, but he's not. He's 6-14-1 against the spread when he's the favorite away from home. Now, I mean, this is 15 hours away from home, and they're down there. The Eagles are staying at the local. They're staying at the airport right there. They're staying at a hotel at the airport, while the Packers are staying at a hotel about 15 minutes from the stadium, which they say may take them 2 hours to get to the stadium based on the traffic in San Pablo. Have you ever been down there? Have you ever been?
No, I have not. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an interesting game. It's a high. I think there's a lot of crime. I think there's a lot of gangs. That's why neither team will wear green in the game, because green is the color of one of the gangs down there. So the logistics, if this was played in Philly, yeah, this is why. And so the logistics, I think, really, it's a hard game to handicap because of the logistics. But I think at 3, the line was almost a pick 'em, and then it moved to 3. I like Philly here, but I have some apprehension about it. I like Philly here because I think Green Bay defensively will probably take some time to get going with Jeff Hafley's new scheme.
I think the elevation will be interesting too. The side of the stadium, 2,600 feet above sea level. So it'll be interesting to see if they've conditioned themselves enough for that. And another thing, I don't have the exact numbers on how it impacts the football, but in baseball, elevation can affect a home run ball up to 30 feet, can turn a fly ball into a home run. So convert that to a football field, that could help guys get a few extra feet on a kick, could help passing.
And I think the Packers, with the uncertainty of their field goal, they're going to try a new kicker out. He's a rookie. They're going to try him out, where the Eagles have Jake Elliott, who could probably make a 60, like you said. I mean, with the altitude, he might be able to make a 60-yard field goal. So, you have to go to that. I think this is betting advice for anybody this weekend, but anytime you're in a 3-point game, for example, when Indianapolis is playing Houston, I think that'll be a great game, right? And that's a game you and I have been talking about on the morning show quite a bit about, that it sets up perfectly for the trend, because Indianapolis is, when you look at the trends around the league, we have it here, and you see that that trend there. Divisional home underdogs are 18, 9, and 2 straight up, and 23 and 6 against the spread, and that would qualify for Indy. Great. I like that trend. I like the fact that Indy almost beat them last year. Gardner Minshew misses the throw. I think Indy's going to be improved offensively with Richardson under center, their offensive line healthy. But, the Clay, the kicker, he's not healthy. He's got a groin injury. Do you want to go into a game knowing that kicker's not good in a tight game? I think you have to be really careful about that. And I think the other thing you have to be careful about is how to handicap the officials, because these games will not be called like they're called in like a playoff game. This game will be called like a regular season game. There'll be more holding calls and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Let's squeeze one more game in here before we get to the break. And this one includes one of your blue chip coaches against a red chipper, Rams at Lions, Detroit, a 3.5 favorite with the total at 50.5. What do you see in this game?
Well, I see a game where when you watch the tape of the last time they played, I mean, Detroit was kicking the crap out of them. I mean, Detroit moved the ball up and down the field on them. And, I think Jared Goff was 10 for 10 to start the game off. They could run the football effectively. They were really good. Their defense, the Rams were good too. I thought Matthew Stafford was sensational in this game. When you go back and watch the game tape of this game, it was two quarterbacks playing. Now, when Goff had to move, when Goff didn't have time to set his feet and throw, that became a problem. But that offensive line dominated. And, we're going to sit there and everybody's going to talk about, they don't have Aaron Donald. Well, Aaron Donald didn't play great last year for him in this game. It ended up being his last game of the Ram. He wasn't a typical Aaron Donald type start. So the thing that worries you about Detroit is I think Dan Campbell is so aggressive. Again, he only kicked 2 field goals over 50 yards last year. He was only 50% on fourth down conversion. I mean, he's got 118 fourth down attempts since 2021. I mean, this guy will go for it in the most. I mean, he wants to do it all the time. And I think people are used to him being in 4 downs. I like Detroit in this game. Initially, I like the Rams, but the more I watch that tape, I really like the way the Detroit dominated the line of scrimmage. And if you think Detroit's going to be healthier on defense, which I think they will be, I think you got to like Detroit here, even if it's 3.5.
And think about the Lions defense too, ranked 23rd in points per game allowed last year. Now they're getting a boost with DJ Reader, Carlton Davis, and the first round draft pick, Terrion Arnold. So things seem to be trending their way. More NFL Week 1 game previews coming up after this break. You're listening to the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome back into the GM Shuffle. It is time for the DraftKings Bet Highlight presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned because you'll hear more about DraftKings and all it has to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. So, Michael, we've previewed some of these games and headlines, but it's time to make some money. Let's get into our best bets.
Yeah.
Lots of games to pick from. Where are you putting your money this weekend?
Well, one thing, typically I would like Miami at home in the heat going against somebody going to play them because I think it's such a tough environment to go down there. You play in New England and you go to Miami in the beginning of September and you can't duplicate the heat and humidity. You have it in Nashville, but it's hard to duplicate in other places. But now they're playing Jacksonville. And I mean, look, there's a concern there might be a monsoon. I don't know if you followed the weather, but in Florida, there could be an apparent monsoon, some kind of storm. I don't know. I'm not a weather expert, but I think to me, you have to be very careful. If it's a rainy day, do not play it if you think it's going to be, because Trevor Lawrence is a disaster in weather that's bad. I mean, he fumbles already. He has too many fumbles to begin with. And when it rains, it becomes problematic. I would typically like to bet against Tua when it rains because he doesn't hold on to the ball either. But I think he's playing against a guy that fumbles more than he does when it rains. So, but that being said, take that out of it. I think this game's going to come down to Ryan Nielsen, the new defense coordinator of Jacksonville. Last year, the Falcons were third in the league in third down defense without any pass rush at all. That's pretty impressive. And they were fourth in the league in red zone defense without any pass rush. That's really impressive. So I do think that they will move the football. I think opening games are usually pretty good for Trevor Lawrence. I think he'll have a chance to throw it effectively against a secondary that may not have Jalen Ramsey. There's some kind of injury going on down there with him, so we're not quite sure about where he is. And if it's a clean day, I think Lawrence will throw the ball. I don't know if the Dolphins have that pass rush. Chubb's not back. Whether Phillips is 100%, I don't know. Losing Wilkins, I think, really hurts them inside. So I would take the 3.5 as the DraftKings play of the week here because I like Jacksonville to go down there. They practiced in this heat. They played in this heat. It's really not going to be an advantage that typically Miami gets. When it's 80 degrees or higher, Miami's usually pretty good.
Yeah, I'm looking up the weather report now because I did hear reports about that storm coming. It looks like it's moving till Tuesday, changing routes and holding
Okay,
off
there we
till
go.
Tuesday. So that would be good for Trevor Lawrence and your bet.
Yeah, yeah, no question. And if it's a
My
clean day, look, Tua is 15-3 straight up when the weather is 80 degrees or higher, and McDaniel's is 9-1. But most of those games are against teams from like Buffalo, New England. They're not used to that heat and humidity where I think they really are down south. What's your play? What do you have up in store for us?
Yeah, there's also a little bit of weather involved in my play as well. I'm going to go up to Cleveland where they're expecting 15-mile-an-hour winds, which obviously makes it a tough day for passing. But it's really the changes to the two offensive lines that I'm looking at here. We've talked about Tyler Guyton before, the rookie left tackle for the Cowboys. Lots of upside with him, but he played at right tackle last year for Oklahoma, which is kind of a gimmicky offense, not pro style. Switching to the left side in your rookie NFL debut, going up against Myles Garrett, good luck with that. And he's not the only one. There's
Yeah.
Brock Huffman at center was an undrafted free agent in 2022. He only made 2 starts last year after kind of bouncing back and forth between the practice squad and the roster. So piecing together this offensive line, I don't really feel great about that. But then the
Yeah.
Browns
Well, they
also
might end up
doing an
starting.
O-line shuffle.
Grace, they might end up starting Beatty at center, which would be the rookie in there anyway, and that would also be another young player playing too.
Mhm. Yeah, but the Browns also going through an O-line shuffle of their own. They're starting a rookie on the right side who's going to be facing Micah
Yep.
Parsons. The other question too, how close can the Cleveland version of Deshaun Watson be to the Houston version? So I just don't see a lot of points scored. This total is already low. It looks like it's sitting at the key number of 41, but I'm going to shorten the game, take the first half under 20.5 here.
Yeah, I kind of like that play. I think to me, both teams. I don't know where Cleveland is. They're talking about moving Jake Conklin from right tackle to left tackle. Now, Willis practiced today.
Mhm.
I don't know if he could play in the game. They brought him off a PUP, but I think losing Billy Callahan in their offensive line is going to be problematic. I don't know what to make on Deshaun Watson. I really don't. I mean, they don't have Nick Chubb. They're changing offenses. Ken Dorsey, the new offensive coordinator. Kevin Stefanski says he's still going to call plays. Can they be as effective? I was looking at a stat the other day, and I think to me, can they be as effective as they were of the 22 teams? I think our Action Network had this stat on their site. Looking over the last decade, 22 teams have put defensive EPA of minus zero point 0.1 or better. All 22 teams got worse the following year. Like, can they duplicate this home field advantage that they had defensively? I don't know. I mean, I think they were so dominant at home. Now, it's going to be hard to run the football, but I think it's going to be hard for Cleveland because I think Mike Zimmer is going to move Micah Parsons around and he's going to put him on where he
Yep.
thinks he has an advantage. And I think it's just going to be a challenge. I could see this being a lower scoring game. I really could.
Well, yeah, and the Cowboys, I think, lost 3 of their top 5 pass rushers. So even more pressure on Micah Parsons now. Well, it'll be really interesting to see how they unlock him, not
Yeah.
just in this game, but the
Well,
entire season.
Well, they're going to do a lot of different things, and that's going to be problematic for Cleveland because Cleveland, doesn't really know they know what Mike Zimmer will do. Remember, Kevin Stefanski was on Mike Zimmer's coaching staff, so he knows him
Mm.
really well. So he knows how to be prepared for the double A gap pressure. He knows how Mike thinks. He knows how Mike wants to take things away. That does give him an advantage. but you got to execute to gain that advantage, right? You have to be able to
Mhm.
say, okay, we can get this done. I'm not sure Deshaun Watson can get it done. I think it's a risky play. I actually kind of have been
Mhm.
leaning. I have to give out picks tomorrow on Chris Russo's show, on Mad Dog Russo. I give out 3 picks
Mhm.
every Friday. I'm actually leaning. I think the Lions move too far away from Dallas because I think Cleveland has as many
Mhm.
issues with their team as Dallas does, although they don't have public issues because they don't have holdouts like Dallas does, or the questions, are they going to sign Dak? Are they going to sign McCarthy? They have legitimate football questions. Is Deshaun any goddamn good? That's the number one. Is he any good? I don't know. I loved him when he came out. I loved him in Houston. I don't know if he's any good anymore, you know? And so are they any good on defense again? Can they
Mhm.
still match up? One thing I do know is this will be a game where Dallas will struggle to run the football. Right. Remember, Mike McCarthy at Green Bay always went against Jim Schwartz when he was in Detroit. So they know each other there. So there's a lot of familiarity in terms of the scheme and what it matches up to, which I think
Mhm.
favors Dallas a little bit because I think Mike knows that it's going to be hard to run the ball against the way Schwartz plays.
Well, familiarity helps the under, and there is a correlation between the underdog and going under the total. So, I if this game goes how we're thinking, I think the under is a safe bet here. I was actually leaning the Browns way too earlier in the week when the number was shorter, but you're right, as the week has gone on, I'm like this is a lot closer than we think.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots we'll
I
figure
just think
out
it's
in
gone
that
too
one.
far. I think perception on
Yeah.
Dallas has created this number. And I mean, I don't know. Let me look here right now on all the books all over.
Mhm.
But I think to me, this number's still sitting at 2.5. I think it's a worthwhile play if you can get it at the 2.5 number. Because look, Dallas is a good team. I understand they lost a lot of guys. I'm not arguing that. But it'll probably be windy in Cleveland. There's no question about that. I don't doubt that at all. But Dallas's field goal kicker is sensational. And Aubrey's really good. And look, let me say this to you, Grace. If they kick the ball to Turbin, if they kick the ball to him on this kickoff return thing, he'll score 2 touchdowns. I mean, this guy's really good. I would never kick the ball to this guy under the new kicking regime that's going on because one crack and he's out the door.
Okay, so big point swing in this one. There's also another large point swing in Vikings Giants. Vikings opened as a 1 point underdog. They're now a 2 point favorite at the Giants. And it's kind of some funny alternate reality going on because Sam Darnold is back at MetLife Stadium. On the other side, Daniel Jones coming off an injury. He wasn't cleared for contact until July. He had some preseason action, only scrambled once, which is kind of a concern considering how their defense operates. And you have Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores on the other side. You know he's going to have the blitzes dialed up for Daniel Jones. So I bet the Vikings on the money line at minus 120. It's a little juicier now. But how do you see this way going, Michael?
I think to me, every time the line moves away from something, and I'm always a little skeptical. I mean, look, this is a game where Brian, and you're right, he's going to blitz. He's coming off the bus with every single blitz. I don't trust Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones is you got to play the under here. He's 17-6-1 to the under in home starts. I mean, I think you definitely have to do that. I think the Giants are an under team. I think this offensive line for the Giants, for all the talk about them improving this offseason, I'm just sure they are. But I don't know. Like, I don't know how you feel good about, laying points with Sam Darnold. Like, wait a minute, that's still Sam Darnold over there. I don't know if I feel good about that. I might make this my Hall and Oates. I can't go for that play because I want to take Minnesota like you. I believe that. But to me, I liked it better when Minnesota was a dog and getting the points. But now,
Sure.
the home team's getting the points, and now I got to trust Sam Darnold to not turn the ball over. I mean, no wonder why I got gray hair. This is just a problem.
Well, I did take the money line. So it's a bit
There you
more
go.
conservative
Smart girl.
laying the points with the Vikings. But I think it's more, Justin Jefferson. It'll be the healthiest he is all season. Jalen Naylor is healthy, and they're getting an upgrade at running back with Aaron Jones, a true dual threat with pass catching
Yeah.
ability out of the backfield.
Yeah, no question. I love the Aaron Jones addition. And you're trusting Kevin O'Connell, too. That's really what you're doing here. You're saying he's going to manage Sam Darnold because they've won a lot of close games 2 years ago. They didn't win very many close games last year.
All right. Well, that's our week 1 preview. Michael, it's been a fun week with you. Can't wait to move ahead in the season. We're going to win a lot of money, learn a lot of things, hear a lot more great stories from your 40 years of experience. Can't wait for it.
Thank you, Grace. I appreciate it. Yeah, we're going to get caught up on The Sopranos, too. Don't you worry.
Oh, I will. Don't worry. It's on my to-do list.